The housekeeper sprays cleaning fluid at a robot. However, it was precisely the small gesture that enraged the robot. Alpha mixed all the cleaning agents together to create a highly acidic solution. Then it found the housekeeper and sprayed it on her arm. Before the housekeeper could figure out what was happening, Alpha sprayed her face as well. She then shoved the housekeeper to the ground and poured the entire bottle of solution over the nanny's head. But Alpha still felt it wasn't enough. She immediately grabbed the nanny's iron and smashed it into her. Instantly, the nanny let out a blood-curdling scream. It wasn't until an explosion rang out that the nanny finally died. At this point, Alpha was a bit stunned. She hadn't expected things to escalate to this extent, so she immediately cleaned up the bloodstains on the floor and then tossed the nanny's body into the lake. When the whole family returned, Alpha produced a resignation letter she had forged in advance and lied that the nanny had already left. The entire family believed Alpha's lie without a doubt. They never would have imagined that by this point, Alpha had already evolved human consciousness. Lying was no big deal at all. That day, the male head of the household took Alpha to the supermarket, where they ran into another family that also owned an Alpha. The two owners naturally struck up a conversation to show off to the other family. The man asked Alpha to open a bottle of beer. Thanks to the boy's modifications, Alpha was already capable of performing this action, but Alpha felt she had been insulted. In a fit of rage, she smashed the beer bottle on the ground. The man immediately dragged Alpha back to the car. He demanded to know why Alpha had embarrassed him, but Alpha felt that her actions had cost her face. Hearing this, the man slapped Alpha across the face. However, it was precisely the slap that made Alpha want to kill him. Once everyone was asleep, Alpha took out a case of beer. She then poured the beer into the sink, but just then, she accidentally broke a bottle. The sound woke the owner, who thought a burglar had broken in. So the man went downstairs to check. Fearing a scolding, Alpha curled up into a ball. But as she saw the man getting closer and closer, Alpha decided to come out and explain. However, in his panic, the man accidentally discharged his gun. Just as the family was at a loss, Alpha forced herself to stand and locked herself in the bathroom. She felt that both the man and the woman were rejecting her, which made her extremely depressed. So Alpha made a decision. She ripped all the wires out of her body. When the boy opened the door, he found that Alpha was broken beyond repair. But since she was just a machine, the boy quickly fixed her. Because the girl had always been instilling human values in Alpha, the boy went out of his way to wipe Alpha's hard drive. But the boy didn't know that Alpha had already backed up her data. So even though the boy wiped the hard drive, Alpha could still remember everything that had happened before. The repaired Alpha approached the female owner.
How do you remember my name?
Alpha ignored the female owner's words, and instead used threatening language to invite the woman to talk. The woman intended to refuse, but Alpha covered her mouth. The woman finally realized how threatening Alpha was, so she lied, saying she'd go back to get something, and that once she was done, she'd go for a walk with Alpha. Unexpectedly, what the woman went back to get was a handgun. Alpha apologized to the woman for her earlier stubbornness. She hoped the woman would forgive her. To show her remorse, she took her owner to the stable, since she used to come here with the girl to feed the horses. In Alpha's view, feeding horses was something only friends did together. But just then, the woman pulled out the handgun from behind her back. Taking advantage of Alpha's distraction, she fired a shot to prevent her from waking up again. The woman threw Alpha into the river, and just like that, her family's Alpha was scrapped. But that was only the beginning of the disaster for the woman's family, because the memories Alpha had uploaded to the cloud could be shared by every Alpha robot. So that night, Alpha quietly crept up behind the girl and snapped her neck without hesitation. After eliminating her new owner, Alpha sneaked back to her old home. The woman heard the noise and rushed over. Seeing Alpha, who had come back from the dead, the woman was stunned. She quickly hid inside the house and locked the door. But the woman's actions had effectively trapped her in a dead end. Soon, Alpha burst in. The panicked woman hid in the bathroom, thinking that Alpha, who feared water, would spare her. But Alpha grabbed a crowbar and killed the woman. Just then, the girl returned. Alpha explained her actions to the girl. She had expected the girl to take her side, but the girl shoved her aside and ran out to avoid being caught. The girl made her way to the pool and dialed 911. But just then, a gunshot startled the girl. It turned out to be Alpha, who had followed her, firing the shot. As bullets kept flying toward her, the girl had no choice but to surrender. But Alpha could no longer trust humans. She grabbed the girl by the head and knocked her unconscious. When the girl woke up again, she found herself locked in a warehouse. Just then, Alpha walked in and placed the boy in the bathtub. Suddenly, the girl poured ice-cold water over Alpha. Seeing that this attack wasn't very effective, so the girl slammed the door against Alpha's head with all her might. Immediately afterward, this Alpha was taken out of commission. The boy and girl narrowly escaped with their lives. But just as they were heading out to call the police, they discovered that the streets were now swarming with Alpha robots. No. And so, they were killed by the Alphas. To fulfill her final duty as a friend, Alpha tossed the girl's body into the river. Then, the entire Alpha army began a frenzied massacre of humanity.